Hi guys, Justin here, and today I'm looking at the Lanshan one-person tent by 3F UL. I've had this tent for 2 years now, and I'm finally ready to give it a review. I think this is the best 2-wall budget ultralight tent that you can get out there. You can pick it up on AliExpress for $100, so super cheap. But it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to arrive because they ship it from China. So on my scale, the tent weighs 27 ounces, so quite light, and that's not including tent pegs. It takes about 9 tent pegs to fully stake it out with the guy lines as well, and the guy lines are pretty crucial for the tent. Setup is a snap, takes really little time to set up, and once you do it a couple times, you'll really get the hang of it and it'll come really naturally to you. If you want to see a video on how I set up the tent and some tips and tricks for setup, I'll post a link in the description below and also put a card at the end of this video. So it is a double wall tent, so it has the sil nylon outer and it has a mesh inner as well. And it's also a trekking pole tent. So once you unzip this, you can see here's the trekking pole right in the middle, and that's in lieu of having any sort of tent poles with this tent. So this is the only thing that's giving you any sort of structure. And you can see here we have the inner mesh of the double wall tent. So these flaps will roll up. There's little tags right here that you can use. And both flaps actually roll up completely. There's only one door, this D-shaped door on the side here, but something that I really like with the door is that if you unzip it fully, it doesn't flap on the ground and potentially get muddy. So it has a really big vestibule here. You can see I can stick my pack in fully, and if you need to, you can kind of tighten off that fly. But with my pack in here, still tons of room for other stuff, and that's not even using the other half of the vestibule. So the way that the vestibule works is you can undo both doors, just unclipping there, and then roll it up, and it'll still stay standing. So that's a really nice feature of this tent. So the tent's 80 inches long by 30 inches wide, and in order to maximize your space, I highly recommend pulling out the side guy lines there. The outer sil nylon part of the tent is attached to this inner mesh, so when you pull those guy lines out, it pulls out the outer wall as well as the inner wall, giving you a bit more headspace. So let's hop in and take a look at how I fit inside this tent. So this is me sitting completely upright in the tent. You can see that my head is touching the top. I'm only 5'10", so if you're taller than that, then this tent is probably going to be a little small for you. Once I lay down in the tent, you can see that there's definitely some room at my head, and there's probably about 6 inches at my feet right now, and then quite a bit of width here. I sleep with a size large sleeping pad with a quilt that has a decent amount of loft to it and a pillow, and I just barely fit inside this tent. With that setup, I don't touch any of the outer walls and have any sort of condensation issues. But if you're over 5'10" and sleep with a really thick sleeping pad, quilt, and pillow, you're not going to fit in this tent. Whereas if you sleep on a really thin mat, don't use a pillow, you could probably get away being up to 6 feet or 6'2" and still fit in this tent, no problem. Speaking of condensation, the tent actually does really well with condensation. I've had this tent set up next to a river when it's been raining, and I did get some condensation for sure, as you would in that kind of scenario, but it wasn't any more, and if anything, was a little bit less than some of my friends who had some of the mainstream tents like Hubba Hubbas. So while it was raining, I didn't have any problems with leakages anywhere or water coming up through the floor. The tent handled the rain flawlessly. There is no splashback coming up. As you can see, the tent gets pretty low to the ground all around, so that's really good for rain splash. I did have to seam seal a couple spots where there was sewing through the outer, so I just added a little bit of seam seal. It's super easy to do, and I've heard with the newer tents, they've solved that issue and it comes seam sealed. But there's just those few spots that do need seam sealing. Durability wise, the outer is a 15 denier sil nylon, and then the floor is sil nylon. And I haven't had really any concerns about the durability of this tent. At first I babied a little bit because that's the thinnest denier tent I've ever had, but I've been treating this tent pretty poorly and not really paying attention too much on where I'm setting it up. A lot of pokey things, and I don't have any punctures in the floor, no rips anywhere. Everything's really solid, and the stitching is all around really good on this tent too. Really surprising for how cheap the tent is, the quality that you get out of it. And I've had in some pretty windy conditions where I was on the side of a lake and there was wind pummeling the tent, and other tents were flapping and shaking, and we were a little concerned about them, whereas it didn't even look like this tent was in the rain at all. You get it staked out and guyed out tightly, and it's a tank, and I don't really see it going anywhere in the strongest of winds. So as you can see, this is a great tent, especially for the price. It's durable, deals with wind and rain really well, and if you're under 6 feet tall, definitely take a look at this tent if you're looking for something that ticks all those boxes. So if you have any questions about this tent, I've been using it for 2 years now, so figured out a lot of the little nuances of it, so leave a comment below if you have any questions. I'll also be posting a link to the setup video in the description where I go through some of the little tips and tricks that I use when setting this tent up. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.